I am one of the lead SLPs for Frisco, and we appreciate you joining us today for our topic of speech, language, and communication at home. Just want to give you a brief introduction to who we are as we go through the rest of today. There's quite a few SLPs on this training, but as they each talk about their various sections, they'll introduce themselves. But like I said, my name is Shelley Walton. I'm one of the leads. Mitzi Mobile is also a lead, and she will be presenting today as well. We have Susan and Christine, who are AT specialists, and then 4 other members of our SLP team who are going to be sharing about various topics today. So the whole purpose of this is to talk about how you as parents can support communication at home and the various things that you have around your home and the various ways that you can support communication in the car and different ways that you can support your child and help them grow their vocabulary or work on their articulation or various, if they have assistive technology devices, how to bring that into communication at home. So we just wanted to talk through, we're going to share ways to support your child's learning and communication today. We're going to talk about ideas and strategies to use at home and in the community, incorporating your child's device into your daily life, as well as resources to access more information. If we talk about something here, you'll have access to this slide deck as well. And so there's links to the things that we reference, so you can go back and look at those later if you want to pull something up. And then we just want to give you permission for it to look messy. I know that if you are working on communication or speech at home, you may sometimes feel the pressure for it to look like a speech therapy session and to last 30 minutes long and have all these different resources. And I just want to release you from that pressure. Our goal of having speech at school, or if they are working on speech in a clinic, is just to have that structure so that it can be more functional and more natural at home. And it can, those skills can be functional and used when they need to be. So I just want to give you permission for it to look messy. 2 to 3 minutes here, a conversation about a book you already have. I don't want you to feel like you have to go out and buy all these resources or attend all these things, because you have the skills to support your child's communication, and we just want to support you and empower you in that. So again, it does not need to look like a full session. It can just be 2 to 3 minutes, and that is very life-giving and impactful for your child. So we'll start off with toys.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Belknap. I'm one of the speech pathologists at the Early Childhood School, and I work in the preschool language classroom. So we do a lot of literacy and book reading, but we also do a lot of playing. And so we do imaginative play where we're just making things up. But we do have a lot of toys, and they kind of run a whole, on a whole spectrum. So I'm going to show you, I've got some toys here that I want to show you. And then I want to specifically talk about how easy it can be to work with them, and then how to get them. So first is these cause and effect toys. So one that I really, really like is a popper. It's just a ball popper that you can get on Amazon, and it comes with like 5 or 6 little balls, and it's really great for requesting. And you pop it, the ball flies out, and then you talk about the sound it made, where it went, and then they can request for you to do it again. They can go get the ball. So just something really easy and repetitive that is surprisingly not tiring. Like they could just do it all day. This goes on and on. It's like the thing that keeps on giving. It's amazing. And they have all different ones. So we have unicorns, but they have cows, they have robots, they have all different poppers. Another one we do is Legos. We play blocks all the time. And it's a really great way for them to build just different things. And sometimes, we'll talk about, oh, look, I built a bridge. And I'm like, oh, it's just the way everyone's imagination works differently, that it doesn't necessarily look like a bridge, but then you can talk about describing about putting the blocks on top, or the dinosaur walking across the bridge, or you go under the bridge. So something really easy that many people already have at home that you can play with. Legos are super easy. Okay, another one is farm airplane scene toys. So again, another one, a really good one, and pretend this goes to pretend play too, is a kitchen. Okay, you can cook, open the oven, it's hot. Oh, open the fridge, close the fridge, it's cold in there. And then talk about what you put in, pretend to eat, pour the tea. We do a lot of kitchen is also the thing that no one ever gets tired of doing. We could play kitchen every day, all day. One of the things that we have been doing lately a lot of is I found at Target Dollar Spot, like they have just the toys in that area when you first walk in. I get a lot of stuff there. And they had all of these, I don't know if y'all can see, I don't know if you can see, but they have all these different buildings. So they have the fire station, they have a hospital that we talk about, oh, we went to the doctor because we had a boo-boo. We go to school, and then we have all of our cars, which are another thing that is a great, great toy to use that almost everyone just has play cars at their house, where you can make the sounds the cars make, you can make them go, you can make them stop, and then you can talk about places you go. You know, one thing I don't have is like one of those fancy rugs that has the road on it, and you drive around town. I don't have that. So we just use our imagination and we just drive the car on the carpet or the table, and we make it fall off and drive to school. And what do we do at school? So we do a lot of playing, going to different places, which is also a big favorite here. One thing that I just got this year that my kids absolutely love is, and this is just on Amazon too, and it's kind of big. It's a critter clinic, but it has doors in it. And it has keys that you use to open up the different doors. And I just hide all different things in there. I have like a cat and a dog. I have Mr. Potato Head's glasses, and I have a person in there. And we talk, I mean, it's great for describing, or I can say, I can ask, oh, I have something in there that makes a sound like meow. And then they have to guess without seeing what it is. And then we get the key and we open the door, and then we talk about the cat and what it eats and what you pet the cat and the sounds it makes. And then we put it back in, we close the door. So all things that, you know, that you can use. I mean, you can put anything in these and then make a game out of it. The one that I have obviously is the farm that everyone loves. Everyone always wants to play the farm. It makes noises. I have all the animals, and I have just some examples. I think on the next page is the farm. Okay, this is, yes. So when we talk about farm and the pig lives on the farm, lots of our kids just say pig, you know, they're going to point and they're going to label it. So one thing you do to increase language, especially if they already have some of that vocabulary, is you can just expand on it. Oh, yes, it is a pink pig. Or if they're just saying eating, then you can say, oh, the pig is eating. So we are expanding on what they are saying, just adding an extra word, adding, I would say generally 1 or 2 more words than what they're using. And then you can ask the question, oh, what are they eating? Oh, he's eating an apple. I mean, we talk about farm, pig, horse, cow, label all of the things. Then you can do fill in the blanks. So you can say, moo says the, and then you just wait for them to see if they can finish the sentence. I think that might be on that example. maybe he's on, here we go. There you go. Thanks. So you're starting the sentence and then you're asking them to finish it. Just then you can talk about what the child is doing. This is parallel talking. So for kids who play, but they're not really talking through what they're doing, then you talk about what they're doing. If they're not playing with the toys, then you play with the toys. You're showing them how to play with it. And then you are talking about what you're doing, modeling that for the children. And then once they start playing, then you're going to talk about what they're doing. Okay. Also great for following directions. So you can put the pig in the barn, give the cow to daddy, or, oh, the chicken goes in the top of the barn. So working on a lot of those different concepts. And then really easy, some of these things you don't have, but are easy to get. Some of them you do have. One thing we don't always use toys. Sometimes if we just have an empty box, then we play with an empty box. Like, you know, if you have stuff that toys came in at Christmas, like big giant boxes, you can be in the box. You can turn the box over and get under the box. You can make a fort out of a box where you climb in, you crawl out. Bubbles are a good one. And another really great one is hide and seek or peekaboo. So these are all things, you know, that all you need is a place, and they're really good. You can talk through them. Oh, where was I hiding? You're counting, getting a lot of interaction that way. One place I get toys is, like I said, Dollar Spot, the Target Dollar Spot. You can do Five Below. And then another great one that I have done a lot is like the neighborhood pages. If you have a neighborhood Facebook page group that you're part of, you can ask, you can say, hey, I'm looking for a farm for my kid. And so many people will have them that they just have laying around that their kids don't play with anymore, that they will be happy to put on their porch for you to come pick up. And I've gotten so many toys that way. I think that's good for toys. That's a lot.
So this slide is talking about prompting hierarchy and how you can kind of work through the different levels of support for your child. So you're not kind of what Jennifer had talked about, the different like parallel talk or self-talk or extending or expanding, different ways to support their language rather than always jumping to giving them the response or giving them the answer, allowing them time to process what you're asking them and take in all the details that they're seeing or that they just heard before they provide a response. And then you can kind of walk through the different levels of prompting supports that you can give to make sure that they are getting that opportunity to process and to think about it before providing an answer. So that's what this slide is specifically.
If I could jump in, Shelley, if you can go back to that last slide really quickly. Sorry, I'm Susan Sen. I'm one of the assistive technology specialists. Everybody knows that I just like to talk, so I'm going to jump in there. If you look at the prompting hierarchy, if you notice, we don't start asking, what do you want, until level 4 of the prompting hierarchy. So we really want to make sure the kids are not so prompt dependent on us asking them what they want, what you want. So the first level of that prompting hierarchy is just to wait them out, like Shelley said. And then you kind of give them an indirect cue, like pointing at something, or then giving them at level 3, like, what now? What should we do now? Kind of an open-ended thing. And it's really not until you hit that level 4, if they haven't responded to those 3 things first, that you ask, what do you want? And I feel really strongly about making sure that our kids are independent communicators and not dependent upon us asking them all the time. So I apologize for jumping in. Shelley, take it away.
No apologies necessary. And that kind of is a great segue, Susan, to our next slide, is just the power of silence. And waiting is one of the most powerful tools that you have in your toolbox for a child, because they learn that reciprocity of, I asked you a question, or I'm waiting for you to give me a response, and then just waiting until they have that time to process. They get that, oh, I need to respond to something. And so it lets them process what you've said and what they heard. Like we just talked about, gives your child time to formulate or think how they want to respond. It teaches turn taking. I said something and I'm waiting for you to respond. It reduces that prompt dependency that Susan was just mentioning. It also shows value in their voice and response, that you are anticipating that they are responding, and you value their part of this interaction and what they have to say and what their thoughts are. And it's only awkward for us. It feels super awkward, and it also feels a lot longer than it really is. But it is so powerful to our students and our children and other people that you value their response time and giving them that extended time to respond. So the next portion that we're talking about is books and literacy.
Yes, and I'm going to address that. My name is Emily Lemon. I am a speech language pathologist, and I work at the elementary level. This is my 9th year. Before moving through the slides, I just wanted to give a little intro to why we love reading books and why we always implement that into sessions. Research does show that reading aloud is the single most important thing that you can do to help your child prepare for reading and learning. And on top of that, just continued growth of knowledge as your kids get older is super, super important. There are some things that reading aloud is going to help with. The number one thing that, of course, we address is that language development. The more words that your child is hearing is going to increase their overall vocabulary and knowledge, and just going to help for their future success. When you're reading with your kids, you're also showing your love for reading. You're giving an example that is that you are loving reading and that you value reading. And so your child is going to take that and really, resonate with that, and also share that love for reading. I kind of already mentioned this, but books are a great way to, one, have enjoyment, but also just to learn new information. There's a lot of things that, if we're looking at how we learn, reading is one key way that we gain more information and more knowledge throughout our lifespan. So starting early and really sharing that with your kiddo is going to be super, super great for their success in school. Also, just overall literacy skill building that reading enhances: vocabulary, phonics, storytelling, comprehension. Reading is going to build all of these areas. Research shows that it's great for brain development. And the last thing is just overall bonding. It's a great way for you and your child to bond and have that relationship. So the next thing that I want to go through is, of course, how do we pick a book? What do we do when we have a book in front of our child? Sometimes we feel that we just need to read that book to our kid, but it is super, super important that we're interactive with that. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what that might look like. The first thing, we really want to choose a right book. And so this visual is great to kind of look at all of the areas that you should think of when we're choosing a book. The first thing, why are we reading that book? What's the purpose? Am I just finding something that is interesting and that's going to be pleasurable to pass the time, or am I getting a book because I want to learn something? So just kind of know why that you are picking that book and selecting it for your kiddo, and develop that interest. Does this book interest me? If you want your kiddo to be interactive and sit and be happy and really interactive with you, then you want to make sure that your child is interested in the book. So have a few books to choose from. Look through the pictures, read through some of the pages and see if that's really gaining your child's attention. Because one, we want it to be pleasurable for them, but two, we want them to attend to that book if we want to build on that communication, if we want to start asking questions and things like that. The next thing, again, that comprehension piece, do I understand what I'm reading? We want to make sure it's at the just right level for these kiddos. And then the last one that's going to kind of help with that aspect is, going through each sentence and identifying if your child knows that word, or if not. We want to make sure, again, it's not too easy, not too hard, but at that just right level. And then the next one, this is another visual, the just right, when we're picking a just right book, which I kind of just mentioned, but we wanted to put on there because as a speech therapist in the elementary schools, I hear the kiddos use this a lot, and that's from kinder through 5th grade. I know that teachers use this 5-finger rule. Our librarian uses the 5-finger rule, so that they're gonna start hearing that as they enter elementary. And again, that's to help understand if they know what they're reading. So that visual is really, really great to just read through. There is a link in here for the Scholastic Parent Guides. That is just going to have a lot of resources and recommendations and kind of top pick for different books. So if you are having trouble identifying different books, then definitely take time to go through that website because they give a lot of good, most popular books that kids are reading. When we are looking and starting to read books, we do want to teach pre-literacy skills. That is super, super important. If a child enters kindergarten, already knowing how to open a book, read left to right, find different words within that book, it's going to allow those teachers to really hone in on teaching the different sounds and reading the different words and using and answering different questions to build on that comprehension. So if you can, as a parent who is about to have a student come into kindergarten, or when we're looking at 0 to 5, just really starting to look through these books and show and model how to read that book. We've already talked about the importance of involving your kids in choosing that book. We want to make sure that they are interested in what they're reading so that they're going to pay attention and attend and be excited about it. How we do that, like I mentioned before, is just modeling that excitement and model that reading for your kiddos at home. Another good option is there are different apps and websites that will have audiobooks for you. You can listen to the audiobooks, or within an app, they have books that you can read through. They highlight the words so that it can practice reading from left to right, and you can practice that word identification. So there's just a lot of options out there for you guys to get your kiddos involved in reading. Next, I want to really stress the importance of going to check out this website that is linked. It's called Read Aloud 15. It gives you so many resources on how to reach your kids, why it's important, research behind it, different charts and visuals that are going to really support you in putting together a good reading program and plan for you and your child at home. So please, please, please take the time to look at that website. I think you're going to learn so much from it, and it's going to set you guys up for success to have a really good reading program at home. Routine, building this reading into a routine before bedtime. When you first wake up, kind of whatever works best for your family, your kids are going to really like that, and it's going to be something that they're going to look forward to. And so that website kind of really helps you iron out some details on how to do that and how to keep track of what you're doing. So now when we open a book, there's so many different things that we can do. We can talk about the pictures, the characters, the setting, just talk about what's going on in the book. Yes, the words are so important, but especially with our early childhood kiddos, or kiddos that cannot read the words yet, they're going to rely on those pictures, and matching words with pictures is still going to build that vocabulary. You can talk about just naming the nouns, you can talk about naming actions, you can do descriptors. There's just so much that you can use in the pictures in the books to help you. Also, when we're labeling those different vocabularies, asking your kids to just point to what they see in the picture. I have an example in the next slide that I'll kind of walk through that with you, but these are the things when we open a book, what we're doing. You higher level skills, it's not only about pointing to items or answering, basic WH questions. We can make predictions. We can infer what's happening in the story. We can try to think of different words that are alike or similar to the things that we're seeing in our books. So antonyms and synonyms, there's just so many different things that we can do. Some of the examples below are also rhyming or multiple meaning words. So just really expanding on what the book is showing you and just taking it to that next level. But the most important thing is just ask your kiddos questions while you read. That is so beneficial. Just with the questioning that I was mentioning, and I've already talked about how reading is not passive. We want this to be interactive. There are different kinds of questions that you can ask. These first three, the first one, literal questions. What color is that? What type of plant is this? Just kind of labeling those things. Inferential questions, that's going to be a step beyond. What are they feeling? What might they do next? Things like that. And just continuing to vary the questions that you are using. So here is an example of a page of a book. So if we are opening up a book and we're just doing a book walk to explore the pictures to see if they're interested in that. Here's just an example where you can say, point to the blue truck, point to the yellow truck. How do the characters feel? Look at, and you can make sure that you have them look at their facial expressions and things like that. So really, we're just walking through the pictures and trying to figure out ways of, finding questions that go with the pictures and helping just label the pictures and increasing the vocabulary there. So really super easy, just using those pictures in the book as a way to start initiating having those conversations with your kiddos.
Excellent, thank you. So one other thing that you can do with your child is working on some of these skills through board games or video games, or even playing on their apps on their devices and whatnot. I know many times parents will ask a child that's already in speech, what did you do in speech today? And they'll say like, oh, I played a game. Or if you have family game night or you're playing a game with your child, you're doing a lot more than just playing. This is just a short abbreviated list of all of the skills that are worked on when we are playing either board games or, like I said, having interactions via video games or things like that. You're working on social skills, what to say, what not to say, giving encouragement like, oh, that was a good shot or whatnot whenever they're playing. Turn taking, waiting, sequencing, conflict resolution, expected and unexpected behaviors that may result from how the game is going. Also working on following directions and explaining the rules. Perspective taking too, like how do you think you doing this, like especially if you're doing like a strategy game, you taking this move, how does that impact the other person, and what do you think they're going to do? Like I said, just strategy, joint attention, and memory, just to name a few. So just playing a game encompasses a lot of skills that are very beneficial for your children. So just a few examples that you may either have in your home or have played yourself. Candyland. Candyland is, the game where it's colors and things, but they're working on knowing their colors and one-to-one correspondence, matching, turn-taking, memory card games. They're working on sequencing, weighting, memory, strategy, puzzles. They're working on visual perception and looking at the overall picture and noticing details. So it's not just they're doing a puzzle, it's filling their time. It really is building their comprehension and their vocabulary, their language, their communication skills. Late elementary, Among Us is a persuasion or perspective taking game, cooperative play, social interaction, social communication, answering WH questions, advocating, and then Guess Who. Guess Who is a really good one. I know that on the market there are a lot of different variations of Guess Who, which is really neat if it's specific to a student interest, like Star Wars Guess Who or whatnot, that your child may be interested in. It works on asking questions, describing categories, making, inferring. So lot more skills that go into it than just the game itself. And then again, middle school, high school, D&D, there's a lot of imagination, cooperation, storytelling, multiplayer video games. You work on social communication, strategy, story, task completion if you're working on something together, and having to kind of collaborate on that perspective and expected behaviors. And then Discord servers, you join up with other people who share your same interest to chat during a game. You can discuss topics. So there's a lot more that goes into it that are building your child's skill set, not just occupying their time. So video games, apps, and board games have a lot of benefit to them as well. These are just some mobile apps that we are an example of some things that also build communication or work on those things. But we do, again, put our caveat there to monitor your child's use for age appropriateness for your child. Marco Polo is a video-based messaging between community. So it's kind of like a texting app, but it's a video-based. So you kind of record yourself and you send it, and it sends it straight through to the other person. And so it's a little bit different than just sending a text message. Heads Up, Words with Friends, Pokemon Go, Snapchat, TikTok, Reddit, Instagram, things like that also work on you can observe communication skills. And then podcasts and YouTube videos, Audible and audiobooks. These are really good things that you can do alongside your child to kind of work on that bonding, and also encouraging the use of their communication skills or building their communication skills through these apps or games as well. Daily living routines.
Hi, my name is Dominique Gonzalez, and I'm a speech language pathologist at Smith Elementary School, and I also help out at Clark Middle School. I'm glad to be here today and help. So I'm going to talk about the daily living routines. One way you can incorporate and build your child's vocabulary. On the next slide, there are ways to explore from home, and not only just actually going to the aquarium or the zoo or the park. There are really cool ways to do like virtual field trips, animal live cams, and one way to use those, especially like the animal live cams or the virtual field trips that I looked into, is I like to show the kids, what is the polar bear doing? What is he laying under? What is he grabbing? There's actually one that's really cute of a polar bear, and he is grabbing the trees and pulling it down. So having your child make connections to, if you go to the park, remember the polar bear, what he was doing with the trees? Can you find any twigs on the ground? What sounds do they make? So I'm really big on, I call it kind of a give me five, where I use the five senses to explain new vocabulary. So one of the kiddos I was working with did not know what bark was. And I said, well, yeah, like a dog barks, but there's also this stuff on trees on the outside called bark. And so holding up your hand, and you could say, what does the bark look like? What does it maybe sound like? I know this sounds silly, but maybe what does it smell like? Of course, we're not going to taste the bark, but you can just kind of laugh and have fun with that, kind of making it real in real life. So I know COVID has kind of changed things for us. And also some kiddos that have health issues, or parents that have health issues that cannot get out and get your child to the park. So these are just some fun ways that we put these together that you can kind of virtually take a little field trip. I made note of 3 that are my personal favorites on the virtual field trips. There is one called Slime in Space. So if you click that, you can see the astronaut with the actual slime in space moving. And that's a great way to, teach long and short. And do you think this is going to be like, oh, really heavy? Or do you think it's really light? And you can just use things you have at home to teach those concepts. Another thing on the next slide is using actual functional routines throughout the day. So I know the word sounds funny, but it's actually called sabotaging the environment, and we use it a lot as therapists. It sounds really mean, but it is really not. Simple things can be like going into, the speech room or like your home, and purposefully not turning on the light in the bathroom and saying, wait a minute, I can't see anything. What do we need to do? and trying to do what, Susan and Shelley was saying, give them that wait time to maybe they're trying to do a close approximation of I for light on. And you model that. Excellent. We need to turn on the light, and then having them do that or help pick them up and try to turn on the light. So for bath time, when you're putting your kiddo in the bath, look at what they said, fully clothed. No, silly, we're not going to get in the tub with our clothes on. Or mealtime, giving your child a spoon, but no, no bowl of food in front of them. Just silly things like that. Playtime, putting your child's toy out of reach. Oh, I love using that one in therapy. Like you put it way out of way and say, okay, I need you to get it, just trying to get them to request. And then functional routine activities, like I was mentioning before, the going on a walk. I know I do this with my son a lot. I know this sounds kind of old school, but just looking up at the sky and just looking at the clouds, trying to describe the clouds. What shape are the clouds? Feeling the weather on your face, that is cold. We need a heavy jacket to stay warm. The baking cookies or any cooking in general, obviously keeping safety in mind, but I personally love cooking because it teaches that just automatic sequencing. First, we have to, and then typically before we cook, we practice good hygiene, washing hands, again, another sequencing. Doing laundry, great way to teach prepositions as well as just household chores, helping mommy or daddy or grandma or siblings. And then tips for the AAC, which Susan hit on briefly for the augmentative communication devices, is it just says keep your child's device at home, at school, and in your community. Feel free to, I know one thing I do with some of the kiddos I work with do have devices or Big Mac switches, is we will just pick like one word of the week and we will try go. And literally that is what we're doing all week. I am going, Miss G is going, goodbye, or we are going, and then we're working on the snacks in front of them or for more. So I really like to keep it simple and not overwhelm you guys. I know you have a lot on your plate too, and we really just want to build in using communication. Like it was said before, it may be messy and you do not have to do it perfect. You know your child best, and as long as you are trying to describe and kind of expand on those, close approximation, that's a wonderful gift you're giving your child. And sorry, I did not finish, but super key, you want to keep the device charged. So especially if it's a iPad, keeping that plugged in so it's fully charged. And it says keep extra charging cables in your car. That is brilliant. I do that in my therapy bag as well. So thank you so much for letting me share.
Excellent. All right, feeding and swallowing is another component that we address as well.
And I will take that one. I am Mitzi Mabiel. I'm one of the lead SLPs, and I've been here in Frisco ISD for 16 years now. So looking at feeding and swallowing, like they were saying, any of the time that we don't need additional time to do speech therapy at home. It needs to just be incorporated into the functional activities that we're doing every day. So we wanted to start out just kind of providing, Shelley, there we go, providing you with a link to my munchbug.com. This is a site by an SLP who is a feeding expert and author. It's a great resource that you can look at. It has information about feeding babies and toddlers up to age 3. It has ways to make meal times more enjoyable and less stressful, how to avoid picky eating during those preschool years, even ways to get your school-age child to eat their vegetables. So it's a great site to go to look at and get some ideas from. In terms of speech and language, I know, a lot of times as parents, we get home and we're trying to get that meal set up and get everybody fed, and we don't think of it as a time for enjoyment or entertainment or really communicating, because we're just kind of focused on the efficiency of it. But it really is a great time to try to get our kids involved in the cooking activities. We can, it doesn't have to be every meal that you make a big production out of anything, but, if even just 1 or 2 times a week or on the weekends, if you can pull your kid in there with you and have them get involved with you, it's a wonderful opportunity. It can help with sensory things. So, if a kid doesn't like textures, or it can teach them textures. You can put the food in a Ziploc bag to let them feel it and mush it and mix it up, so they don't have to get their hands dirty if that's something that they feel is kind of offensive to them. It can provide times for just a variety of exposure to different foods, tasting things, vegetables if it's something raw versus cooked. It provides a ton of just time for language development with all of the vocabulary, the utensils we use, what's a spatula, what's a ladle, sequencing, before we do this, we need to do this, or first do this, then do this, teaching them to follow directions, getting them set up, identifying the ingredients, talking about all of the things that goes in a meal. Obviously, as Dominique had said, watch out for the safety concerns in terms of the hot stove and that type of stuff. But I mean, having them mix the ingredients and talking about all of that, it just provides a ton of opportunity. Once you're involved in that and you've kind of got them, where they enjoy participating in mealtime, help them to have them participate in meal planning, plan ahead of time. Okay, it's you get to pick your meal tomorrow night. What do you want? And now let's sit down. Now, what all do we need to fix this? If they want mac and cheese, then talking about what ingredients go in that, and then maybe even bringing them to the grocery store with you and having them try to find the items and locating things in the grocery store. The grocery store to me is like the optimal place for vocabulary because there's just so much. So those are all great areas or things that you can incorporate into your time.
I was going to jump in real quick.
Sure.
Meal planning is actually, or this section is actually one area that incorporates a lot of academic areas. You touch on math, you touch on reading with the ingredients and the sequencing, but you also touch on science and how adding oil into this and how it changes things. But it also touches on that social aspect. If you bring in like why we make certain meals, certain foods at certain times of the year, or like family recipes and things. So it's one way that you can really hit a lot of great academic areas and make it functional in real life for your child. Sorry.
No, that's great. Also stuff like categorizing, so, okay, we're cooking and we're making a dessert and we're going to put an apple in this. An apple is a fruit. What are some other fruits? Let's just name, let's just label, how are they different? How are they alike? There's so many opportunities to expand on language and vocabulary. Plus with feeding, it doesn't matter what age. I mean, you can start with them really young, and that can go all the way up into cooking with your high school student. So it goes across the board, and it's just a good life skill to teach them for future, once they're adults. So next slide. And then we just put this on here. There's, I know a lot of kids do not like to try new foods. Maybe you have a picky eater, or they just don't want to give it a taste. This is just an idea of how to reinforce or motivate them to participate in trying new foods. Sometimes if they feel like they kind of have a little control over the situation, they're more willing to try it. So, if they know that, okay, you only have to take one bite. You don't have to eat the whole plate. You get to take one bite and then you get to rate on this scale. how you feel about it, was it good, was it not, then it's something that they may be a little more willing to at least take that one bite, because they know that they get to do something fun. Maybe on your chart you can let them color it in or something like that, just to be a motivator, whatever it is that's motivating for them. So a lot of times that can help to get them to try a little bit more.
All right, assistive technology.
Okay. Christine, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Christine. I was having a problem with my technology. I'm with the assistive technology team. I've been in Frisco for, I think this is my 19th year, so I've been here a long, long time. But I'm going to let Susan go ahead and start talking about some of the assistive technology, and I'll jump in as we go.
Thanks. I'm Susan Sen. Christine Carter and I are both speech pathologists, but we specialize in assistive technology. This is my 23rd year in Frisco ISD. I know it's shocking. I feel like I've been here forever. But Christine and I have been the assistive technology team for a good part of that time, and we're very passionate about technologies. So just to start off, what is assistive technology? Assistive technology is really anything that helps a child, helps level the playing field for a kiddo. It can be anything low tech. We had a student come in one time who needed cotton balls as a pencil grip on their pencil. That would be officially assistive technology. It can be high-tech things like specialized computers, hardware. We have students in wheelchairs who need devices mounted for them. So we do that. It can be add-ons to computers like specialized keyboards, specialized mice that do different kinds of pointing things, computer software. Really, it kind of runs the gamut of whatever you can think of. But it really, assistive technology in its essence is our support for students who need that playing field leveled for them. There is a link at the bottom of the page if you want to explore other definitions of assistive technology. So in Frisco, we're blessed to have a vision team. So we have specialists in vision who give students magnifiers. We have a Braille list. We have orientation and mobility specialists who work on cane skills with students. Shelley, just keep on going through the next couple of screens for me, please. Just some examples of other technologies. We have an audiologist in Frisco ISD who checks on students with hearing aids, any kind of hearing loss, captioning things. But she does something called FM systems. I think there's a new name for it now. She's probably going to be mad at me for using FM systems, but it's basically bringing the teacher's voice to students' hearing aids. So Christine and I do a lot of work with our students who have learning challenges, dyslexia, learning disabilities. We do audiobooks. We look at software for word prediction, text to speech, things like that. Let's go to the next slide. Again, those alternative computers. If we have students who have some physical limitations, there are different ways that we can do. Down on the bottom of the screen, that looks like an old joystick from back in the day, but really that's a mouse. So we have specialized mice that can move computer arrows. Next. And then we, of course, have our amazing motor team. They are the ones who are responsible for movement type technologies. So wheelchairs, standers, positioning things. And they do a fabulous job of that. What we're going to talk about mostly today, though, is communication, of course. So we have several different levels of communication for our students because communication doesn't look the same for everyone. Our goal is that a student has a functional system of communication. If that's verbal, that's fantastic. But for some students, we're not speaking yet. And so we need to offer them some other ways to communicate so that we don't start to have negative behaviors. A lot of negative behaviors tend to come from a lack of ability to communicate our wants and needs. You know, if I want chocolate and I can't make anybody understand that I want chocolate, I'm going to get mad. And I think a lot of people on this Zoom call can relate to that. So the first area of communication that we offer is something called no tech or low tech. Those things that don't require a lot of technology to put into place. On the left side of the screen, you'll see something called a core vocabulary book. It has vocabulary flip pages on it for our students. The middle part, a lot of people are aware of. That middle picture is something we call PECS, which is Picture Exchange Communication System. We use this with our little guys a lot. PECS is really a great way of building the most basic foundational skills of language. It starts by teaching a student that you have to have another human being to communicate with. You have to have a communication partner. The second thing it teaches is to go persist in communication. You find the picture that you want, you pick it up and you bring it to your communication partner. And then the little guy on the picture has a communication book where he's choosing pictures. He can discriminate between different pictures. Like he can pick that train off of his book and give it to his teacher to ask for the train, or he can choose the blocks off of his book and ask for blocks. So we really do use PECS a lot as a foundational system of communication for our skills. If students don't have very good joint attention for communication, we like to start with PECS. If the students are not yet discriminating between pictures, then we like to start with PECS. So that is our no tech. The picture on the far right of the little guy with the plexiglass board, that is called eye gaze. So that little guy is learning how to look at a picture, and we on the other side are noticing what he's looking at. And so we start with the foundations of eye gaze communication that way. That's for our students who have very limited upper mobility, difficulty with volitional control of their arm movements. So we can look at eye gaze for them. Let's go into the next screen. As a next level, we have something called mid-tech or static display devices. So these are devices that are a little higher tech than the picture supports we had in place before, but a little less techy than an iPad. So sort of that mid-ground area. We can program each of the buttons to say something different, but the boards don't change. So this offers a really nice middle ground for maybe our kids who are not able to tap on a device yet, or maybe they need something that won't take them to YouTube. So we do that with our kids instead. And then the next screen shows us high-tech communication devices. We do this a lot with our students. The benefit of high-tech communication devices is we really get a lot of ability to have vocabulary expansion. We can have grammar expansion with high-tech devices. We can teach students how to put together sentences. A lot of times when we start with sentences, we start with very basic sentences like a subject, a verb, and an object. But then with high-tech devices, we have the ability to move on beyond that and really start looking at expansion into more verbs, into adjectives and adverbs, prepositions, things like that. On the right side of the screen, you'll see Drew Brees. I grew up in New Orleans. I'm a Saints fan. I had to throw the Saints into this presentation somehow. That's Drew Brees with Steve Gleason, who is an amazing person. Steve Gleason was on the Saints team that won the Super Bowl back in the day. He was diagnosed with ALS soon afterwards and uses an eye gaze communication device now. He's unable to speak verbally, but his cognition is still completely intact and he relies on assistive technology. And he's a great advocate for assistive technology. So I just had to throw that plug in there. Who dat, by the way. All right, next page. We have a lot of myths about assistive technology that I want to address right now. The first myth is that we don't want to use assistive technology until we've tried everything else. We want our students to be verbal. And then if they're not verbal, then we'll look at assistive technology. That's one of those myths that we really need to be cautious about. We all want our students to be verbal speakers. That is our end goal for everyone. But there are going to be some kids for whom verbal is not the best way to communicate for whatever reason. The earlier we can expose a student to assistive technology, the better. If a student hasn't been exposed, like I said before, they really run a high risk of having negative behaviors. And those negative behaviors, the longer they persist, the harder it's going to be to back off of those and to put a device into place. We have a lot more success starting a student on an AAC device at a young age. And then if they don't need it anymore, great, we move away from it. Then if we start a student, say middle school, high school level, we're just missing a lot of opportunity to build language at that point if we haven't tried a device or even the low-tech picture supports at that point. The next myth is that AAC will hinder a student from speaking. That is the number one thing that I hear from parents all the time. And I would be concerned too. Parents are concerned that if we start them on an AAC device, then they won't talk at all. And I'm here to tell you that that is completely against what the research shows us. Research shows us that using communication devices actually helps enhance language development because it offers a multimodality approach to communication. It allows you to see pictures and to have that picture support, to touch the pictures, to hear the pictures read back to you, and then you get a reward for communicating. Somebody else understands what you're trying to say. I can manipulate my environment by using this device. Wow, that's really cool. It's easier for students to communicate verbally. And I really feel like if a student is going to verbalize, they will. But we want to give them every opportunity to build language at a young age rather than waiting. All right, the next myth. Speech generating devices are only for children with intact cognition. 100% false. We can use any type of communicate, or we can use different AAC choices for students whose cognition is lower than the average range. We have switches that you can touch and it will say a complete message. A switch to say, I want more. And that's great. We have students at every level of cognition using AAC, every level. And so that's one of those things that cognition should not be a prerequisite requirement for using AAC. We may have to choose a different AAC device for a student whose cognition is below the average range. We may have to start with a lower tech device for them, but every child has the ability to use some sort of assistive technology and should be given the opportunity to communicate. All right, our last myth, AAC is only for people who are nonverbal or non-speaking. We see a lot of kids who have verbal speech, but their speech is very scripted, echolalic. They can speak maybe 5-10 words. We see a lot of benefit from using AAC with students who have minimal speaking skills because it does give them that ability to build higher level communication than what they're able to vocalize orally. We also want to think about long-term for those students. What happens a lot is that we see students who, you know, they hit early elementary and they start saying a few words, and that's fantastic. So everybody wants to take AAC away because we want them to be verbal. But sometimes our students don't build enough verbal skills to really be functional. And we really want to be thinking about the transition of our students into high school, even at 5 years old, we want to start thinking about the transition plan for that student. What do we want them to be doing after high school? We want all of our students to be working and to be independent. That's going to be our goal until it's not. So at a young age, we want to be thinking about, can they use functional communication to have a job? Can they ask their employers for the supplies that they need? Can they communicate to their parents that they're ready to go home, that they need a ride, things like that. So, so we definitely want to look at AAC for anyone who doesn't have reliable verbal speech. If our students can't express their personal information, like their name, their phone number, their address, it becomes a safety issue. And so we really want to make sure that they have a good communication system in place. Every one of our students in Frisco ISD, when they leave us after graduation, we want them to have some sort of functional communication system, whether it's a device, whether it's verbal language, whether it's writing out what we need. It does not matter to me, as long as it's functional and meets that student's transition plan. That's what we are looking for. Okay, so let's talk about devices in Frisco ISD. We do have a lot of communication devices. Typically, we start with an iPad with an app on it. All of our devices are connected to remote management in Frisco, which means that we have control at our level on what apps go on that device. And most of the time, we don't have any games on those devices for our students, because we want to make sure that the students understand that their communication device is their voice. And then it's your job as a parent, or your prerogative as a parent, to allow them to have access to another device for leisure as you see fit. But their district device is going to be strictly for communication. We do offer parents technological device lending agreements for their devices, meaning if you want them to take their device from school to home every day, that's fantastic. One of our slides before, we want you to use that device in every setting, because we want children to be able to communicate wherever they go. If they go to church or mosque or temple, then we want them to be able to communicate there. If they go to the park, communicate there. If they go to the grocery store, communicate there. So take that device with you. The lending agreement basically says that you'll take financial responsibility for it if something major happens to it. If you lose it, if you run over it with your car, or you throw it in the swimming pool, things like that. We understand that we take a liability in giving students breakable devices. So if the screen breaks, we will take care of that. So we want that device to not be a scary thing. We want it to go with them wherever it can. Let's see. And don't link that device to personal accounts. We've seen some things on devices that we probably shouldn't have seen. So make sure that that device stays on a Frisco ISD account. There is a link at the bottom of the screen about something called guided access. If you don't know about this, it's really one of the most brilliant things that the Apple creators made. Guided access will allow you to set a passcode so that students cannot get out of apps. So we can turn on the communication app, put that device in guided access, and then they cannot get out of that app. Was there a question about guided access? Okay, so that's a little YouTube video that you can watch. Highly recommend that if you're using a device. I
Susan,
think,
do you want me to? I can go ahead and start talking about modeling.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Give you a little break.
Yeah, perfect.
My soapbox is modeling. I love to make sure that everybody knows that modeling is so vitally important for the communication process for assistive technology. We want to make sure that we're using our communication devices to talk to the student. I know that Emily Lemon had talked about reading, and so it's always so important to make sure that when you're reading that book, you can find the book that you the word in the book that you just read, you can find it on your iPad, making sure that you're relating reading the iPad to just normal communication, showing them the picture of the dog in the book on the iPad, just going back and forth, talking about the pictures on the iPad that you see in the book. You want to make sure that the kiddos actually see you using those devices as well. So we model, they learn from watching and listening. So if we're just always talking to them and not using that device, they're not going to understand that that device can actually be used for communication. We don't expect them to understand that that device is, if it's sitting on the kitchen table and we're expecting them to, you know, verbalize that they want more dinner. We have to have that device sitting right next to them when it's food time, when they want to eat. We can't expect it to be like, you know, 10 feet away from them. It has to be with them at all times. A lot of times we hear that, you know, the device might not be working. And that might be because there's just a lack of modeling. We have to, it's so important that we have to use it, you know, over and over throughout the day. Like, you know, in the car, you can say, you know, you don't have to use, parents often say that like they feel like they don't know how to use the device because they can't find all the words. The most important thing is to understand is that you don't have to point to every picture when you're talking in a sentence. Like, so you don't have to say, I see the dog. You can just point to the dog and then verbalize, you know, oh, I see the yellow dog outside. You just really want to make sure that you're using that communication in the pictures throughout the day in every type of environment. And then the other the other thing that we're also worried about is the over prompting of the device. You want to make sure that you don't always want to just say, oh, show me on your device. You can always sit and you can wait, and that increasing the wait time is perfect. You know, you can always just kind of maybe give them a little point, or, you know, like, oh, this is what I like. But, you know, you don't always want to make sure that you're saying, show me on your device, because if that kiddo is going to talk, he's going to say the words. He's going to do the most easiest thing for him, and he's not going to take the hard way out. And so if he can verbalize it, he's going to. But then also you want to just make sure that you can also provide that information to him and show him how to find those pictures as well. So, and then we do have a wonderful video. I don't know if you want to show that, Shelley, but it is all about modeling and just how to use the devices like throughout the environment and how important it is. But that's something we can watch at home, or you can do it now. I wasn't sure if you wanted to do that.
I think for the sake of time, we can just leave it here that they can access if they'd like to later, so we can save time for questions.
And so the rest of that right there is just some really important links. That AssistiveWare, we do use a lot of the Proloquo to go. That's probably the main communication app that we use within the district. And so there are some amazing resources on there, ways to use the devices at home, just different ideas. There's a lot of literacy information in that app. And then the PRC, that's another common app that we use, the Tobii Dynavox. Those are all just wonderful different AAC links. And AAC actually stands for Alternative Augmentative Communication. And so that's just another form of assistive technology. We typically use assistive technology as to summarize everything, but AAC is actually just for communication. So, but we would be happy to provide any training as far as how to use the devices at home and with your students. And so if you ever have any questions or concerns about the device and, you know, maybe your student is not progressing, always reach out to the speech therapist and we can always help support that as well.
All right, well, we've reached the end of our content for today, but I want to save time for any questions that may have arisen while we were speaking. I'm going to stop screen sharing, so I wanted to give you a warning before all of our faces kind of